There comes a point in every life when the noise grows unbearable, when the applause fades, yet the need for it still echoes inside you. You wake up already performing. You scroll, reply, smile, agree. You rush from one task to another, feeding a rhythm that no longer feels like your own. Somewhere along the line itself blurred, between duty and approval, between sincerity and survival. You tell yourself you're being responsible, kind, adaptable. But deep down, another voice whispers, when did I stop being true to what I feel? This is where the question must finally be asked. Who are you really living for? For many, the answer comes with discomfort, because so much of what we call our life is a mirror polished for other people's eyes. We dress not for peace, but to be seen. We work not for purpose, but for validation. We speak not from truth, but from fear of silence. Day by day, piece by piece, we trade fragments of our soul to keep the image intact. The image that tells the world, I'm fine, I'm successful, I belong. But beneath every performance lies fatigue. And fatigue is honest, it is the soul's first protest. The prophet said, there is a piece of flesh in the body. If it is sound, the whole body is sound. That unrest you feel, the quiet ache behind the smile, is not failure. It's the call of that piece, your heart, seeking alignment again. Ibn Arabi wrote that the moment a person forgets their divine origin, they begin living as a reflection of creation, not as a reflection of the Creator. In simpler words, if your choices are built on other people's expectations, you will forever be at war with your own peace. Because what pleases the crowd will never always please your conscience. Think about the times you said yes while every fiber of your being whispered no. The times you agreed just to avoid conflict. The times you stayed silent when your heart screamed otherwise. Each moment seems small, but each is a thread, and together they weave a pattern of quiet suffocation. Consider the story of Amal, a woman who spent years saying yes to everything. Extra shifts, family favors, endless obligations. People called her dependable. Inside, she felt invisible. One evening, after yet another day spent serving every demand but her own, she sat alone and realized she could not remember the last time she made a decision without guilt. That night in stillness, she whispered her first honest dua. Ya Allah, show me who I am when no one else is asking. The next morning didn't bring fireworks, only clarity. She began noticing small signs. The exhaustion that hit before each forced yes. The calm that followed each small no. It was through these signals that she learned. God doesn't always speak in words. Sometimes He speaks through the heaviness you feel when you betray your truth, and through the lightness that follows when you return to it. So ask yourself, when you wake, when you work, when you speak, who are you seeking? Whose gaze are you living beneath? The gaze of people shifts with mood and memory. The gaze of Allah never does. Choosing yourself above all else does not mean arrogance. It means remembering the soul He entrusted to you. It means living with the awareness that pleasing creation at the cost of your Creator and your own truth is the subtlest form of loss. Because in the end, the most dangerous thing is not failing others. It's forgetting yourself. To choose yourself is not to abandon others. It is to remember the sacred trust that was placed in you before you ever entered this world. In the Quran, Allah tells us that He offered the amana, the trust, to the heavens, the earth, and the mountains. But they declined, fearing its weight. Yet the human being accepted it. This trust is not a burden of arrogance. It is the soul itself, a piece of the divine breath within you. To neglect it for the sake of appearances, convenience, or approval is not humility. It is betrayal. Some confuse choosing themselves with pride, but Sufis make a vital distinction. Pride says, I am better than others. Amana says, I must honor what God has placed within me. The first closes the heart, the second purifies it. Choosing yourself is an act of fidelity to the Creator, not rebellion against creation. The Quran reminds, do not sell my signs for a small price. Each time you silence your truth to win favor, you are trading a sign of God within you for the fleeting approval of others. That approval fades the moment you leave the room. The cost, however, lingers. a slow erosion of peace. Ibn Arabi warned that when a person lives by the gaze of others, they begin to mistake echoes for guidance. They hear every voice except the one that matters, the still, steady call of the real within. Think of Aisha, a nurse whose kindness was praised by everyone. She worked double shifts, volunteered on weekends, never refused a request. Yet when she prayed, her heart felt heavy. It wasn't fatigue, it was imbalance. One night, sitting under the hospital's dim light, she whispered, "Why does giving so much leave me empty?" The answer arrived in the silence, because she was giving from depletion, not devotion. Her yes had lost sincerity because it no longer came from a full lamp. The prophet said, "None of you truly believes until he loves for his brother what he loves for himself. But how can one love for another what they no longer feel within?" To choose yourself in this sense is an act of faith, a declaration that your soul, your fitra, your inner balance are also part of your religious responsibility. When you set a boundary, rest your body, or walk away from what poisons your peace, you are not placing yourself above others. You are placing the trust of Allah above the expectations of people. There is a subtle but vital difference between selfishness and self-honoring. Selfishness hoards, self-honoring preserves. The selfish person says, "Only I matter." The self-honoring servant says, "What Allah entrusted to me must not be wasted." You cannot pour from an empty vessel. You cannot reflect divine mercy if your mirror is clouded with resentment and exhaustion. Ibn Arabi wrote, "Your soul was not created to imitate the crowd. It was created to mirror the real." That mirroring requires clarity, and clarity demands stillness. Every time you choose yourself with sincerity, every time you align your intention with truth instead of fear, you polish that mirror a little more. And in that reflection, you begin to see the face of purpose. So pause and ask, when was the last time you did something purely because it felt aligned with the peace of your soul? When was the last time you said no, not out of anger, but out of reverence for your limits? These moments are not rebellion, they are remembrance. Because choosing yourself is not ego, it is gratitude, a quiet way of saying, "Ya Allah, I will not waste the soul you breathed into me." Before transformation begins, there is always a whisper, a subtle unrest that visits the heart long before life unravels. You might call it fatigue, boredom, or confusion, but in Sufi understanding, these are not random moods. They are messages. Ibn Arabi taught that every inner state carries meaning. What disturbs you is not against you, it is guiding you. When you walk a path that your soul did not choose, creation itself begins to resist. Doors close, opportunities vanish, energy fades, not as punishment, but as redirection. You may notice this misalignment first as unease, a heaviness that appears even in the middle of comfort. You have the job, the family, the recognition, yet something inside refuses to rest. This restlessness is not ingratitude. It is a sign that form and essence have drifted apart. Outwardly, everything seems in order. Inwardly, the heart is knocking, softly but persistently, asking to be heard. Consider Yusuf, a young man praised for his discipline. He never missed a deadline, never questioned a command. To his superiors, he was ideal, obedient, consistent, quiet. But each night, when he closed his eyes, a strange emptiness settled over him. His prayers felt mechanical, his achievements hollow. One day, after being overlooked again for a promotion he didn't even want, he finally sat still and whispered, "Why do I feel unseen, even when I'm doing everything right?" The answer was simple and unsettling, because he was living everyone's truth but his own. He was chasing the image of success built by others, not the calling placed within. The disappointment he felt was mercy in disguise. Allah closing the wrong door so he could face the right question. Misalignment often reveals itself through repetition. The same argument returns in different forms. The same disappointment wears a new face. You think life is being cruel, but what if it is being consistent, repeating the lesson until you learn it? Ibn Arabi would say that patterns are mirrors. If a situation keeps reappearing, it's not because destiny is stuck, it's because your awareness hasn't shifted yet. The outer world keeps echoing the inner one. patiently waiting for alignment. Sometimes misalignment speaks through your body. Tension that doesn't leave, sleepless nights after false yeses, illness born from suppressed truth. The Sufis viewed the body as a canvas where the soul writes what the tongue refuses to say. That ache in your chest when you compromise your values, that sinking feeling when you ignore intuition. These are not coincidences. They are divine reminders that your heart still remembers what you truly need. Yet many of us silence these signs. We label them weakness, dramatics, mood swings. We drown them in noise. More tasks, more talk, more distraction, until the whisper becomes a storm. And when the storm arrives, we call it crisis, not realizing it was mercy, come to shake us awake. So pause for a moment. What parts of your life feel heavy though they look fine? What commitments bring exhaustion instead of growth? Which relationships demand you shrink just to stay? These are not random discomforts. They are signs. Allah never leaves a soul without guidance. Sometimes that guidance is joy. Sometimes it is the ache of dissonance. To recognize these signs is to honor the language your soul speaks. A language older than words, written in the rhythm of peace and unrest. Because the truth is simple. Peace is the sign of alignment. Heaviness is the sign of distance. And every unease is an invitation, not to despair but to return. Something subtle begins to shift the moment you choose yourself. Not out of defiance, but out of faith. Life doesn't suddenly turn easy, yet its weight begins to make sense. You stop rushing to please every voice and start listening for the one that truly matters. The noise doesn't vanish overnight, but you no longer mistake it for direction. It's as if the air clears and, for the first time, you can hear your own footsteps on the path meant for you. This alignment does not begin with grand victories. It begins quietly. You notice that the same actions that once left you anxious now bring calm. The same rooms that once drained you now feel neutral or empty because their power over you is gone. Ibn Arabi wrote, "When the heart remembers its origin, everything around it remembers its place." Choosing yourself restores order. Not control over others, but harmony within. When you start honoring your truth, even time feels different. Days once filled with obligation begin to breathe again. The rush softens. You give attention where it is deserved, not demanded. The Sufis say that when you act from sincerity, barzakh enters, a quiet expansion. What took hours now takes minutes. What once felt impossible begins to unfold without force. Consider Hamza, a shopkeeper who for years kept his store open 7 days a week, fearing loss if he rested. Each Friday he promised himself a pause, yet guilt always pulled him back to the counter. One Ramadan, exhaustion forced him to close early for prayer. That night, an unexpected peace washed over him. No fear, no noise, only presence. From then on, he closed his shop for every Jumu'ah. Customers adjusted, profits remained, and something deeper changed. He began to see provision not as a result of toil, but of trust. This is what happens when you choose yourself with sincerity. You no longer chase what isn't yours. You attract what aligns. Because when the heart aligns with truth, our barzakh, the provider, sends sustenance not through endless striving, but through ease. Opportunities arrive quietly, sometimes from directions you could never have planned. You also begin to see differently. Al-Basar, the all-seeing, grants clarity. You recognize which pursuits are born of fear and which of faith. The glitter that once dazzled now looks like dust, and what is humble begins to shine. Even delays, once your greatest frustration, start to feel like protection. Al-Hakim, the wise, hides certain doors not to punish you, but to preserve you, and gratitude follows. You thank Allah not only for what arrives, but also for what ends, for every detour that spared your peace. You realize that unanswered prayers were not rejection, but redirection toward what would not harm your soul. So how do you know you've truly chosen yourself? Watch what leaves: the constant fatigue, the need to explain, the guilt after every boundary. And watch what stays: calm mornings, silent certainty, fewer words yet deeper meaning. The world outside may not understand this transformation, but the heart does, because peace is the signature of truth. Close your eyes for a moment and ask, when was the last time you felt peace without reason? That feeling is not random. It's a sign, a quiet echo from the real, whispering that alignment has begun. When you choose yourself, you are not elevating ego. You are returning to design. You are stepping back into the current meant for you. And once you are in that current, life stops feeling like resistance. It begins to flow. When you finally begin to honor yourself, one of the first lessons life teaches is this: peace must be protected. It is not enough to find alignment. You must learn how to guard it. Without boundaries, every small demand, every unspoken expectation will leak into your days until the light you fought to kindle begins to dim again. The Sufis often compared the soul to a lamp, fragile yet radiant. If you leave it exposed to every wind, even a kind breeze can extinguish its flame. Boundaries, then, are not barriers of pride. They are acts of ibadah, worship. Allah warns in the Quran, "Do not throw yourselves into destruction with your own hands." 2:195. Many imagine destruction as a great calamity, yet sometimes it begins quietly. By saying yes when your heart says no, by allowing disrespect under the disguise of patience, by carrying loads Allah never asked you to bear. To set a boundary is to refuse this slow erosion. It is to say, my peace is a trust, and I will not throw it away. Think of Layla, a university student admired for her helpfulness. Every week, friends asked for her notes, her time, her attention. She said yes out of kindness, until her own studies began to suffer. The exhaustion turned to resentment, resentment to guilt, guilt to silence. One evening, while reviewing the verse above, she realized she was the one throwing herself into harm, not through sin, but through surrender to every request. The next day, she began with a small sentence: "I'd love to help, but not today." That single no carried no arrogance, only awareness. She soon discovered that her worth was not in endless availability, but in sincere presence. When she did offer help, it came from clarity, not compulsion, and that sincerity gave her more barakah in both study and friendship. Ibn Arabi wrote, "What you guard for the sake of Allah is never truly lost." Every boundary you set with pure intention to preserve your sincerity, your worship, your health, becomes an offering, because the body, the mind, and the spirit are all vessels of trust. To neglect them is not humility, it is imbalance. There will always be voices that call you selfish for choosing rest, for saying no, for seeking solitude. But remember, even the prophet would withdraw to the cave of Hira to renew his connection before returning to serve. Isolation was not escape, it was alignment. Boundaries create that sacred cave within your daily life. Moments, spaces, and limits where the noise cannot reach you. Ask yourself, which boundaries in your life have gone unspoken? In what relationships have you confused kindness with compliance? And what would change if you began treating your peace as a form of gratitude to Allah? Something to be nurtured, not negotiated? Every no uttered with sincerity is also a yes. Yes to clarity, yes to the soul's rhythm, yes to serving from fullness instead of depletion. When you guard your inner lamp, its light spreads further. Those who truly value you will draw near to its warmth. Those who only sought to use its flame will drift away. And that is not loss. That is tazkiyah, purification. Because a soul without boundaries is like a lamp without glass. It may burn brightly for a moment, but every passing wind will own it. To honor the trust of your soul is to shield that flame, so it may shine steadily and sincerely for the real who lit it within you. Once you begin setting boundaries and honoring your soul, a new silence enters your life. A stillness unfamiliar, yet deeply sacred. It is within this silence that something subtle awakens, firasa, the spiritual insight that allows the heart to perceive truth before the mind can reason it. Ibn Arabi described it as the seeing of the heart, not of the eyes. It is the clarity that rises when noise fades, when the soul finally breathes without interruption. You may have experienced it before, that quiet knowing which arrives without explanation, a certainty that something is right or wrong, even when logic argues otherwise. It isn't fear or impulse, it's recognition. The real planting and understanding within you faster than thought. The prophet said, "Beware the insight, firasa, of the believer, for he sees with the light of Allah." That light does not shout, it whispers. And to hear it, you must be willing to pause. But pausing is not something our age easily allows. The world rewards urgency, celebrates noise, and fears stillness. Yet every revelation, every unveiling, begins in quiet. When you silence the world's demands long enough, you begin to notice what had been speaking all along, the soft nudges of your own soul. Consider Farid. A man offered a promotion that promised wealth but demanded compromise. Everyone told him it was foolish to hesitate. The offer glittered, his heart felt heavy. For 3 days he wrestled in prayer, torn between reason and restlessness. On the 4th day, he sat alone after Fajr and whispered, "Ya Allah, if this path dims my light, close it." Hours later, an unforeseen clause in the contract revealed obligations he could not fulfill with integrity. In that moment, Farid realized the heaviness he'd felt was not fear of change. It was divine protection. This is the mercy of firasa. It speaks before damage is done. It is the heart's alarm, gentle, persistent, guiding you back to alignment. But too often we confuse it with anxiety or dismiss it as imagination. We reason it away, only to later realize that the unease was truth trying to be heard. Ibn Arabi taught that the real never stops communicating. It is we who stop listening. To cultivate this insight, you must create stillness. Not just silence around you, but quiet within. Begin with small pauses. Before you speak, before you accept, before you commit. Ask softly, what is my soul saying in this moment? Is this choice born of peace or pressure? Then listen. Not for a voice, but for a feeling. True guidance carries calm, even when it calls you toward difficulty. Ego urges hurry. Truth invites patience. Do not fear that listening to your heart will lead you astray. The Sufis remind us that when the heart is sincere and surrendered, it becomes a mirror for divine wisdom. The danger lies not in trusting your inner compass, but in silencing it until it stops pointing anywhere. Every believer carries a spark of that light, yet like a flame, it needs space to breathe. Each moment of stillness, each breath where you turn inward, clears the smoke of confusion. And through that clarity, you begin to recognize God's subtle signs, the ease in one direction, the resistance in another, the peace that follows truth. Remember, guidance seldom arrives in thunder. It appears in the gentle tilt of your spirit, the sudden calm after prayer, the line in a verse that feels written only for you. Nothing is random. Every sign is an invitation. So when the world urges haste, slow down. When confusion shouts, be silent. For the real does not compete with noise. He waits in the stillness, in the whisper, in the place where your heart finally listens. Every journey toward truth passes through resistance. It is the gate between who you were and who you are becoming, the barzakh, the in-between realm where two realities collide. Ibn Arabi described the barzakh as a bridge between worlds. Neither this nor that, but the meeting point where transformation is born. In life, this bridge often feels like turmoil. Old patterns pull you back, familiar voices question your change, and even your own thoughts whisper, "Wasn't it easier before?" Yet this struggle is not proof of failure. It is the labor of birth. When you first begin to live authentically, you disturb every system built upon your silence. People accustomed to your compliance may resist your clarity. Habits once soothing may now sting. Doubts creep in. Am I being ungrateful? Am I wrong for wanting peace? But growth rarely arrives in comfort. As the Sufis say, the seed must split for the flower to emerge. The cracking is not the end. It is the beginning. Think of Miriam, a teacher who always absorbed others' burdens. When she began saying no, colleagues accused her of pride. "You've changed," they said, as if transformation were betrayal. For a while, guilt clawed at her. But one afternoon, as she sat in the staff room and heard the same complaints she used to echo, she realized she no longer resonated with them. What once felt like belonging now felt like bondage. Her heart had outgrown that frequency. The discomfort was confirmation. She was crossing the bridge. Ibn Arabi wrote, "Every unveiling is preceded by a veil. Resistance is that veil. It tests intention, purifies motive, and ensures your choice is sincere. If choosing yourself was only ease, everyone would do it. But Allah, in His mercy, allows friction. So your steps are forged with conviction, not convenience. You will notice resistance in two forms, the outer and the inner. The outer may appear as criticism, misunderstanding, or loss of approval. The inner emerges as fear, fear of being alone, of disappointing others, of stepping into the unknown. Yet beneath that fear lives faith, waiting to breathe. The heart whispers, you are not walking away from love, you are walking toward truth. When these tests come, return to niyyah, your intention. Ask yourself, why did I begin? If your answer is rooted in sincerity, to honor the trust Allah placed within, to live in alignment with peace, then hold firm. The Prophet said, hold fast to that which benefits you, seek help from Allah, and do not give up. The turbulence you feel is not punishment, it is the atmosphere of ascent. Air grows thin on higher ground. You may lose certain companions along this path, not because they are evil, but because your seasons differ now. What once connected you was convenience, not consciousness. As you evolve, your circle refines, not by exclusion, but by resonance. Those meant for your next chapter will recognize your growth and rise with you. So when resistance meets you, don't retreat. Thank Allah for the sign that movement has begun. If nothing pushed back, you would still be standing still. Each time fear whispers, answer with remembrance. He who seeks the gaze of people loses the gaze of the real. Let the world question you. Let old patterns tremble. They are only the echoes of a life that no longer fits. Every tremor is proof that the shell is cracking, and through that crack, the light of your becoming is already shining through. When the storm of resistance passes, something remarkable begins to unfold. Not loudly, but in quiet synchronicities that seem almost too precise to be coincidence. Doors you once begged to open close without regret. New paths appear with unexpected ease. The same streets you've walked for years feel different, as if reality itself has softened around you. This is tajallī, the divine disclosure, when what was hidden within begins to manifest without. Ibn Arabi taught that the world is a mirror. Creation only reflects what is formed inside you. When you purify intention and act with sincerity, existence itself responds. This is not mysticism in the abstract. It is the lived experience of correspondence. Tanas ub. As within, so without. The more your heart aligns with truth, the more life arranges itself around that alignment. What you once chased begins to find you. People who honor your peace arrive without explanation. Provisions come from unseen directions. The Prophet said, whoever makes Allah his concern, Allah will suffice him for all others. When you make sincerity your center, the real becomes your arranger. Consider Karim, who once filled every day with anxious striving. He feared that slowing down would make him fall behind. But when exhaustion finally broke him, he simplified his routine. Fewer meetings, more prayer, honest work done with presence. Within months, new clients came unasked. Old debts were settled without demand. His outward success now matched the calm within. What changed? Not the world, only the lens through which he saw it. This is the secret of tajallī. Reality reflects the state of the perceiver. Ibn Arabi wrote, the forms you see are the forms of your own heart. If your heart lives in fear, you will interpret every event as threat. If it lives in gratitude, every challenge becomes an opening. The outer does not imprison you, it informs you. Every delay, every meeting, every coincidence is a verse being revealed. If only you read it with awareness. But tajallī is not about comfort, it is about correspondence. When your inner world grows in light, shadows appear more sharply. Not to harm you, but to help you refine. Tests may still come, yet you meet them differently. Instead of asking, why me? You begin to ask, what is this showing me? This shift transforms struggle into schooling. Even pain becomes purposeful when seen through the lens of alignment. You will start to recognize patterns, the peace that follows truth, the heaviness that signals misstep, the repetition of lessons until they are learned. Life stops feeling random. It begins to feel responsive. This is the mercy of the real. He does not shout commands from afar. He shapes the path beneath your feet to nudge you back when you drift. The Sufis say, "The world bends toward the one whose heart bends toward Allah." This bending is not control, it is harmony. When your will aligns with divine wisdom, creation becomes your companion rather than your competitor. What once felt like resistance now feels like rhythm, the gentle choreography of a world in dialogue with your soul. So take note of the signs that now surround you. The ease in a conversation, the timing of a verse you needed to hear, the way opportunities emerge only after you surrender what was false. These are not coincidences. They are reflections. Because when the heart is set in order, the world mirrors its peace. And when you live in remembrance, reality itself becomes a dhikr. Every event repeating one truth. As within, so without. When you finally begin to live in alignment, something extraordinary happens. Not just within you, but around you. Your peace becomes contagious. Without effort, without preaching, you start to affect others. The Sufis call this ta'thur, the spiritual influence of one illuminated heart upon another. It is the unseen ripple that moves through every sincere act. When you choose yourself with honesty and faith, you silently give permission for others to do the same. You become, as Ibn Arabi described, a mirror through which the real gazes upon creation. Most people think service means sacrifice, giving until nothing remains. But true service begins with authenticity. A cup that never refills cannot quench thirst. The Prophet said, "The best charity is that which you give while you are self-sufficient. To give from emptiness breeds resentment. To give from fullness becomes worship." When you are at peace, your very presence comforts others. When you speak from alignment, your words carry weight beyond volume. Consider Zainab, a mother who spent years erasing her needs to appear patient. Her children saw her exhaustion and learned to mirror it. Believing love meant endless self-denial. One day, she began setting gentle boundaries, resting when tired, saying no when necessary, praying before promising. Slowly, the home changed. Her children began to rest too, to speak kindly, to respect one another's space. Zainab realized she hadn't just saved her own soul. She had taught through example what balanced compassion looks like. This is the hidden power of sincerity. The world learns not from instruction, but from embodiment. People may forget your words, but they will never forget how peace felt in your company. Ibn Arabi wrote, "When one heart awakens, the world shifts with it." Each moment you choose truth over pretense, you alter the atmosphere around you. Those who value your authenticity will draw closer. Those who feed on compliance will drift away. This refinement is not cruelty, it is clarity. In time, you will notice that the quality of your connections deepens. You no longer attract those who need your silence to feel safe. You begin to meet souls who speak the same language of sincerity, those who celebrate your truth rather than demand your mask. This is tanas ub in relationships. Like seeks like. When your inner state changes, the outer circle rearranges. The hadith reminds us, a believer is the mirror of his brother. When you live authentically, you become that mirror, reflecting to others their own forgotten potential. Sometimes your courage will stir discomfort in those still living in fear. Do not let that discourage you. A mirror cannot be blamed for revealing what is. Your task is not to convince, it is to be. And as you remain true, your giving transforms. You no longer help to be seen, but to serve. You no longer love to be validated, but because love itself becomes your nature. The energy you once spent pleasing now flows into purpose. Your work gains depth, your speech gains sincerity, your silence gains presence. In this way, choosing yourself becomes the opposite of selfishness. It becomes guidance. For when you align with the real, you become a vessel through which His mercy flows outward, touching lives, mending hearts, inspiring courage in ways you may never witness. And perhaps that is the final secret of this journey. You did not choose yourself to escape others. You chose yourself so you could finally serve them truthfully. Because a soul in harmony doesn't just find peace, it becomes peace. In the end, every journey toward truth returns to a single question. Simple, quiet, and impossible to ignore. What sign in your life have you been overlooking? The one that's gently inviting you back to your true self. Perhaps it's the unease you feel each time you say yes when your heart whispers no. Perhaps it's the door that keeps closing, not to punish you, but to protect you. Or maybe it's that moment of calm you experience when you finally choose peace over performance. Whatever form it takes, remember, nothing is random. Every sign is an invitation. Ibn Arabi wrote that the real never stops calling, only the distracted stop listening. So pause even for a moment and ask, what is Allah trying to show me through this feeling, through this delay, through this restlessness? Because the lesson is already present, waiting for your awareness to unfold. When you choose yourself sincerely, you are not walking away from duty, you are walking toward design. You are returning to the soul He entrusted to you, honoring the light He placed within you. So take this reflection beyond the screen. Let it stir something quiet but certain in your heart. And if this message touched you, share it. You never know who might be searching tonight for a sign that it's safe to be true. Comment below. What is one step you'll take this week to honor your soul? Like this video to support more reflections like this. Subscribe and tap the bell icon to stay connected to Voice of Sufism, where every story is a reminder that the divine is nearer than you think. Until next time, stay aware, stay sincere, and stay aligned, because every sign is still an invitation.